Good morning, and welcome to Friday Thoughts, Living Faithfully Together. And as we gather today, it's just my honor and privilege to sit down together with Russ Morris, who is the chairperson of our Restart Committee, our Restart Task Force. And as we do that, just a little background. We are at a place of talking about reopening for worship and what that might look like. But I also went back and found that it was at our May meeting of the Church Council that they put together the authority, May 19th, Church Council. A motion was made to put together a committee, 7 to 9 people of various backgrounds, reflecting the life of the congregation. And their charge was to develop a process for reopening Trinity, to restart our life together and ultimately restart the church as a whole. And I think, going back at that, back in May, I think in our best and wildest dreams we were thinking by fall.
Right.
And it's gone on a whole lot longer than that. But this group has been meeting so faithfully throughout this whole last year and are now coming to that place that, yes, we hope to be able to reopen for indoor, in-person worship fairly soon. And that's why we're sitting down together today. And so as we start that, I just thought maybe an important question to ask would be, what would you like to share with the congregation about the Restart Task Force and how, where things are at now and who's on that group?
Sure. Well, I can tell you a little bit about who's on the task force. At the time, in fact, I've got my list here. Dr. Rebecca Hansen, Gary Peterson, Joe Tim, Chris Klatt, Jolene Nielsen, Alan Blegan, both Pastor Carey and Pastor Terry, myself, and then here recently, Denise Calhoun has also been joining us for our meetings. That group of people that I just listed is a nurse, a doctor, a couple of moms, a couple of scientists, a couple of folks in business, and we've got all sorts of backgrounds. Alan, of course, is a hospice chaplain, so he brings a different perspective. Pastors bring a different perspective. It's been a nice, diverse group of people. We started meeting in June. I think our first task was really to figure out if we could do anything. I think we recognized right away that the COVID-19 condition was not going to get better. It was going to get worse. And that if we were going to do any togetherness in worship, it was going to have to be outdoors. So we worked with staff, obviously, and made recommendations to you guys through the council for getting outdoor worship going. I think we have continued to kind of resolve issues as they've popped up. Of course, as winter weather came along, we couldn't do outdoors anymore. It was just not safe to be indoors. We continued to watch and use all of the various metrics that everybody is seeing on TV and in the news on how to open safely, and we just couldn't find a way to do that. And now here in the last month or 6 weeks, we've been meeting again quite regularly because we know that the situation is different today. We're heading into spring. We're seeing numbers down. We're seeing vaccinations going up. And the Restart Committee is recognizing there must be. We'll figure out a way to safely return to indoor worship. Yeah. Finally, I'd say in terms of how the task force has operated, and I think it's important for everybody to understand, is without exception, every decision that we have come to, significant decision that we've come to, that we then sent on to council, came from the task force with full consensus. We were never taking votes where it was 6 yeas and 5 nays. We were always in complete agreement as to the recommendations that we put forward.
Yeah. Hasn't always been total agreement. They've come at it from different perspectives, which has been super helpful. but always that willingness to come together to that consensus.
Yeah, that's right. Lots of different opinions. Some much more liberal, some much more conservative, some bringing more science to the table, others bringing more compassion, more heart and soul to the table. But at the end of the day, everybody looking for the right answer and finding it. So.
Yeah. I think what I've cherished the most, church council has been trying to continue the work of the church in a time of incredible isolation and separation, and to have this group that you head up, to have you focus solely on that notion of how do we bring together the community again in the safest way possible. And that's been the sole purpose of the Restart group. That's been huge. And knowing that you're there thinking that through and regularly discussing that, and then bringing recommendations has been so helpful, I think, to the council, but to us as a staff. We rely on that, and you've been there in that way, and it's been an incredible gift, not just to staff, not just to council, but I think to the whole congregation. So thank you.
Yeah, good. As we talked about this discussion here today, one of the questions that I had pondered, or that you had pondered, I guess, was this question about some people thinking that we should be open right now. Why aren't we open? Why have we chosen to be so cautious in our approach to reopening? And I know that, of course, at the task force level, we've talked about that question a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you my view on that, and you can share what your view is. From my perspective, as we talk about safety here at Trinity, I was really struck by a letter that the board of directors at Luther Point Bible Camp sent out last summer. Now, this is last summer, so you got to think about the context last summer. Everybody was freaking out pretty intensely. But at that time, that board of directors decided that they would not have any camp, and they chose that path because, in their letter, as they stated, they just could not accept the possibility of one child coming to camp bringing COVID-19, and they could not accept the notion that they would send a child home from camp with COVID-19. They just didn't feel that was what they were supposed to be about. And we know that that's a very extreme, complete response, but nonetheless, it provided guidance for me. What's my job on the Restart Committee or task force? It's to kind of bring that perspective to the table. And I know you have a slightly different view on it, but
Right. Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciated, Russ, is that you bring the scientific perspective as well. You look at the numbers and the specifics, and you take all of those details into consideration along with that story from Luther Point. I look at it from the heart perspective, and certainly from the community perspective. We are a community of faith. That our core value is how do we love one another, and that the church historically has been known by how it loves one another. So we make our decisions with an awareness of the most vulnerable among us. And if I take any sense of joy or pride even, it's that though we've had a number of cases of COVID within the congregation, none have come as a result of any church interactions. And I think that says a lot. We've really made that a priority. And so now as we look at reopening, we still come with that perspective in mind. So that, for instance, we talked about at our last meeting, when we start in-person worship, if somebody comes down with COVID within 2 days, 48 hours of being in worship, what is our responsibility to share that news with community so that people at least are aware, and then they make their choice going forward. And so we continue to wrestle with those kinds of questions, and that's important.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we should identify that the Restart Committee has made a recommendation, and the council will be looking at that and considering that this coming Tuesday night. And that recommendation is that we do think it's now safe to reopen, and recommend that the church reopen for indoor worship starting on April 11th. That's the Sunday after Easter. Now, we chose that and recommend that as a time for the council to consider because we were concerned about a large group of people that might wish to worship with us, of course, on Easter Sunday. And even as we reopen, and even as Governor Walz authorizes here over the weekend for worship spaces to be able to reopen completely, we'll still have to maintain social distancing. And for us in our worship space, that still is going to significantly limit the number of people.
Right.
So the task force just didn't want to get into a large number of people that would have come that didn't know that they needed to pre-register, that would get turned away. So the recommendation that we are bringing forward is April 11, that Sunday after Easter. It also gives the volunteers a chance to kind of prepare, and staff to bring all of those volunteers together. In many ways, Restart Task Force has got kind of an easy job. We make recommendations. It's everybody else that has to figure out how to implement it and bring this thing to life. So it's complicated, I know.
So it is. And so we're excited about April 11th as a Restart Sunday. There will be requirements. And as we think about that, I'm going to have Matt bring up just for you an example. This is the white marker board that we used last summer when we tried to reopen for outdoor worship. And it'll give you an idea of the amount of details we have to cover. What entrances will open for people to come in. Registration tables as you come in, greeters at each of those places so that we don't get a bottleneck for people. We're going to have to find ways to bring ushers to get you into the places that are socially distanced. What do we do with offering? How do we do communion when we do that? Can we be masked or not masked? Who can and who can't? Masked throughout the congregation, but up on the altar for pastors for clarity of speaking, we can take the mask down. Singing issues, music, how do we do that safely? It's not going to be life as normal. It's still going to have those restrictions, but and we've literally been through the sanctuary and measured out the different spaces with social distancing requirements, which remain in effect. We figure we can safely come up with somewhere 50 to 60 spots for people to sit, knowing that some will be individuals, some will be couples, some will be smaller family units of 3, 4, or 7 people. But to do that, we are going to start with an awareness that we're limiting worship to 50 to 60 people. So that until we get a handle on how that is, and how we come in and how we go out, there's a lot of detail. And we will be looking for volunteers to help with that. We're thinking as a staff right now, it's probably best for those volunteers, if they've been vaccinated, if they will let us know that, if they feel comfortable with doing that. We need help to coordinate all of that. In the meantime, I also want to simply say that throughout this whole winter, we have done outdoor worship as often as we can, weather permitting. And so we did one last Sunday. We had 40 cars and 80 people. And we're going to do it again this Sunday. And we have plans to try an outdoor worship, weather permitting, on Palm Sunday. And actually on Easter Sunday. We will have a recorded service at 9 a.m. on Easter that we will do in advance and will be broadcast out there. We are planning to do an outdoor vigil, 20 minutes or so, to ring in the morning like a sunrise service with a fire pit and the blessing of the fire and the lighting of the Paschal candle and draping of the cross and the reading of the story. That'll be at 8 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, once again in the parking lot, we will have an outdoor service for as many people that we can fit into the parking lot safely. So we are not shutting down for Easter. It's just we will not be indoors because the numbers could be overwhelming and we need time to get preparation for that.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense to me, to do outdoors on Easter where we're much more accommodating to more people and people that come that hadn't had a chance to pre-register. So that's important. You know,
and I know you were there last week when we did outdoor worship with your dad and Diane, and the joy that we saw in people just to be together. We know everybody's looking forward to that, and we are excited about that, but we still have to be the ones who have to hold to the precautions for the safekeeping of all of our beloved members.
Yeah, right. Well, I've got one last question for you. As you think about coming back indoors, what are you looking forward to most? What are you most apprehensive about as you think about returning to indoor worship?
Well, it's important for us to be able to share with you as a congregation that both Pastor Kerry and myself have been fully vaccinated. We are 2 weeks past that, and so we're in that category. We know there are others who are still getting their vaccines and waiting on that, and we're hoping and praying. And I'm also grateful to know that members of our congregation have been helping one another to access the vaccine when possible. For those especially who don't have access to computer, people have been helping to make that possible. So that gives me joy, seeing that. I find great joy and hope and anticipation and expectation about being able to see all of you. I still can't have coffee with you at this point. But being able to see one another, to not be preaching to an empty building, to not tell a joke and have it fall flat because there's nobody here, that's pretty crazy experience. My anxiety is still wanting to keep people safe and wanting to do this in a loving and respectful way, and enabling as many people as possible to find the joy of that. And my anxiety is simply about wanting you to feel safe coming back to Trinity, to re-engage and to reconnect. And in the midst of that, we still have a passion for keeping the connection alive until we can get back to somewhat normal. My anxiety is about people who don't want to follow the guidelines and put others at jeopardy. And so we want to be able to do that for everybody's sake and to do it in the best ordered way that we can. We're a nation of rugged individualists, but that's probably our greatest flaw in this process of trying to come together again. So we ask for your involvement, we ask for your help, we ask for your cooperation so that we can do this in the best way possible for the safety of everyone and for the joy that we all long to find again.
Well, I know from the perspective of the Restart Task Force, we see that as an ongoing responsibility that we have as well, by the way. We recognize that even though we're submitting to the council for consideration a plan that we think can reopen the worship service safely, there are a multitude of other functions that take place amongst us as a parish, Sunday school, fellowship, weddings, funerals, gatherings of all sorts that take place. We recognize that staff and council will continue to look for answers to questions or at least some guidance. And so the task force, while we're all ready to be done, recognize that we'll continue on and monitor the situation. Obviously, for me personally, one of the real concerns that I have is Dr. Osterholm's threat of another surge in COVID cases. And so we're watching the numbers in the county in particular very closely to make sure that if the number of cases starts to tick back up again on a weekly basis here in the county, we can respond by recommending another temporary shutdown or something. But beyond just that, managing and helping and providing guidance to council and staff for the foreseeable future here until everything is back to normal. So
it's been a wild year. I think flexibility has been the norm.
Yeah, right.
In a way we've never dreamed before. And bringing our best creativity in the journey and in the process. And I look forward to that ongoing partnership with the task force as we move things forward. We will continue to bring that creativity. We will be live streaming worship that's done indoors on an every Sunday basis and putting that out so that our people, snowbirds and others, can continue to be involved. And if we are at restricted numbers, we still know people will be watching from home. So that will be happening. And a number of you have said you really have enjoyed the outdoor services. So as weather gets nice, the plan is to continue an outdoor service through the summer on the days when weather permits. And so we'll have an indoor service and hopefully an outdoor service that people will enjoy. And so we'll continue to provide that. But we are absolutely excited and ecstatic about the possibility now of coming together again, seeing one another, being able to share that grace and love of Christ in person rather than just online. And I'm just super thankful for the Restart team, for what they have done to help us in that process. And thank you for the partnership as we move forward.
You're welcome.
So let's us close with prayer. Holy God, you are the one who puts hope within each of us. And part of that hope is the sense of connection and community that strengthens and nurtures and nourishes us day by day. As we bring together these plans for reopening, we ask that your Spirit would continue to guide and help us along the way, and help us to be responsive and responsible in the best ways we can, so that we can do this safely, lovingly, and passionately, so that we can live out our faith from day to day. We thank you for this gift and your blessing. In your name we pray. Amen.